Hi there, guys. I'm here with Dr. Joan Ifland today. She's a lovely lady from the US. She's a CEO of Food Addiction Reset. She's written books in the past about this sort of topic. And myself, as someone that was addicted to food in the past, I was really eager to speak to her today about this whole topic. A lot of people can switch on different diets, but ultimately, if you're still addicted to the food that you're not meant to be eating, it's going to be a big adjustment. Um, so perhaps would you like to introduce yourself a little bit better? Because I've done some reading around you, but I think you can probably speak better about yourself than I can.
All right. Well, my most important credential is that I am in recovery from processed foods and also from the greater toxic culture. There's a tremendous amount of messaging out there designed to sell products that is stuck in my head and making me sick. And we can get into that. I'm in recovery from the culture at large. Uh, I have a pretty long remission list. I have conquered overweight. I have conquered sinus infections, allergies, depression, anxiety, raging. I have conquered epilepsy. I had seizures for about 2 years during my doctoral program. I had my last one in '06. So they've been in remission for 17 years now. I'm in remission from a severe brain injury. I'm all the way back from that, which all these things are considered to be not curable. The medical industry views them as conditions that are managed, controlled, but not put into remission. I'm working right now on putting my lifelong asthma into remission. I'm 71 years old and I'm just in the best health I've ever been in my whole life. So why do we talk about processed food addiction and why do we talk about cultural toxicity? It's because we want to put all diseases into remission. We don't want to have any diseases. And how do you do that? Well, you get into a comprehensive remission program, and you not only is when you stop the stress, which is cultural toxic messaging, then your blood is going to reach every cell in your body. But when you're stressed out, the blood is going to your muscles. And so a lot of chronic diseases are caused by chronic stress and the cells not getting blood flow or enough blood flow. And then the other piece is you want that blood filled with nutrients instead of debris, instead of trash. And processed foods leave trash in your bloodstream via a leaky gut, and then it's not giving immune and anti-inflammatory cells enough nutrition, and so they're not working, and you're not getting the anti-inflammatory pro-immune agents in the bloodstream. So when you get blood to all of your cells and that blood is filled with nutrients, anti-inflammation, and pro-immune agents, you can fix anything, whether it's a downregulated dopamine cell or an insulin resistant fat cell or an inflamed ovarian cell or a blocked liver cell. All of those situations will get better when you've gotten the core, the processed food addiction into remission, and you're not eating processed foods anymore. You're not being compelled to eat processed foods against your will by the addiction, and you've gotten the stress eliminated and you're thinking positively very consistently. You can put anything into remission. As I say, as long as you weren't born without it, lost it in an accident, or had it removed surgically, you can nourish that gland, that organ, and it'll work. It'll work again. Blueprint is still there. Original factory blueprint is still there.
Yeah, I get that. Like our biology is made the way it's meant to be, and all the sort of modern day infringements we've placed upon ourselves as they've ultimately caused negative health outcomes. Um,
Let me just hop in with a little bit of a reframe, if that's okay.
sure, yeah.
We didn't do this to ourselves. In the late 1990s, brain imaging technology came into being, and neurologists could see much more clearly what's going on in the brain. And the corporations immediately started, or they didn't start, they've always hired these neurology advertising people, but they were able to manipulate us to a much greater degree. I hope your audience really gets this deep on the inside. None of this is your fault. It's not your fault you developed a disease. It's not your fault that you're overeating. It's not your fault that you have weight issues. It's not your fault that you can't lose the weight. It's not your fault that you've regained the weight. These are profound and constant manipulations from advertisers and entertainers. So if you think about entertainment these days, it's very stressful. And what's happening when you are stressed, when you're afraid because you're watching that really scary TV show, the way the brain, the stress pathways are related to the addicted pathways. The stress pathways are aggravating the addicted pathways and giving you cravings. So it's a lot of training to disengage from the stuff that is hurting us and profiting the businesses. But you can do it. It's very doable.
That reminds me of a film that was out, perhaps maybe in the 80s, and they put the glasses on each person and they could see everything, like all the conspiracies and the truth. Do you know which film I mean?
I don't remember the show, but the further I get, so we've had our online community for 5 years. We're bringing out a new community called the Remission Optimistic Community, because over these 5 years of having the Addiction Reset Community, where we were focused on putting the processed food addiction into remission, we kept seeing all these other diseases go into remission, like go away. Like the doctor saying, you don't have to come anymore because you don't have it. Your numbers are clear and normal. So we said, it would be easier for us to talk about putting diabetes, heart disease markers, high blood pressure, irritable bowel. It'd be easier for us to talk about putting those things into remission than it is about, first of all, explaining to people that they have an addiction, how they got it. It happened when tobacco took over Kraft, Nabisco, and General Foods in the mid 1980s, 30 some years ago. They've had 30 some years free reign, no restraints, no barriers, no boundaries to addict us. And they immediately started hiring addiction scientists to make their products addictive without our knowledge, and then use couponing and reward programmings to get us to eat the worst of it often enough to develop the addiction, and then surround us with stimulation so that those addicted brain cells are constantly pumping out cravings. So that's why I can sit here and today, 5 years later, and say, get the processed foods out of your system by treating the addiction, putting the addiction into remission, and you can disengage from the state stressful entertainment and stressful people. We all have stressful people in our lives. Then you will be shocked at how many things just go away. But you need somebody like Jonathan to be a personal coach, to be a one-on-one coach. Our program doesn't do that. We do the surround messaging, the blocking of the toxic messaging. We broadcast 15 to 17 hours a day over Zoom, which means you can open your screen and be in contact with a group, which will actually, surprisingly enough, stops cravings. And then you work with somebody like Jonathan to do the one-on-one work, the heavy lifting, the detailed advising. But we're what we are like when you watch football in the United States, the US variety of football, they're wearing helmets to protect themselves from injury. So it's almost like you need a surround virtual environment to protect you from triggering, cueing, reminders, stimulation, messaging, toxic, just designed to stimulate your brain cells so that you'll go and get a product. You'll buy something. So we're like the helmet. We're like the
Mm.
helmet for protecting people from the culture, but it's virtual. You just open the screen, and it's 24 hours around the clock. So we broadcast, and then there's a break. When we broadcast, and there's a break. And in the between times, we have a huge library of videos that I've made over the last 3 years, so that you can always activate the protective part of your brain, which is the frontal lobe. When you are seeing people who are healthy, when you're seeing a video that describes how the brain works and what to do about it, you're stimulating the frontal lobe. It pulls the blood supply away from the addicted, craving brain cells. The craving stops, and the frontal lobe takes over the brain. You have that urge to be normal, which, if you are in the regular culture where most people are sick to some degree, your urge to be normal is going to lead you to be sick. But when you're around healthy people, and you can be around them 24 hours a day, your urge to be normal is going to lead you in a completely different direction, which is, oh, nobody in here is sick? Really? No medications? Okay, well then that's what we're going to do too, because we want to be normal too.
Yeah.
Anyway, I hope this makes sense. I know I'm going on and on.
No, you've actually probably eliminated about 4 or 5 of my questions in that one little prose, so I'm quite appreciative of that. But yeah, it's fascinating the way you say about like the groups. And I've just noticed something. So I moderate a few Facebook groups, some YouTube channels as well, and they all insist that you don't put any non-foods or processed foods on the pages or on the channel. You don't talk about them. And now I can see why, because I knew that before, but I thought I was just a general rule for some reason. But now I can see why, having that media influx constantly in your face saying this is food, this is food, this, when really we know it's not.
It just take one subliminal flash of a highly addictive processed food to send somebody into relapse for years. It's very dangerous. I know, it's kind of ironic, but we don't talk about food in our main chat rooms. We have subgroups for specific food plans. We have subgroups for carnivore, for omnivores, and for plant-based, because it's also very important. I want to be normal. I want to fit in. I want to belong, but with people, like-minded people. So if you're plant-based, you cannot be in a group with carnivores. It's too uncomfortable. You'll leave. So we created subgroups for the individual food plans. Yeah.
I think that's sensible because you're not always going to apply to everyone by just saying, I'm a carnivore YouTube channel. Um, but I know a lot of people with addictive personalities, they're addicted to processed foods and they can't drop, the sugar foods. And having something like yours, which they can access like 17 something
Mm-hmm.
hours a day,
Mm-hmm.
that's huge. That's quite
It's
a
life-saving. It's
I
life-saving.
definitely think so. Definitely.
Yes. Yes. Um, and so we really want to partner with people like you, Jonathan. And I think for the coaches, this is so much more satisfying because you're doing what you're trained to do, which is unbelievably valuable and life-saving, but you don't have to wonder, where your beloved patient, your beloved client is going to go if they wake up in the middle of the night with an intense craving. You know that when you leave them, they are protected. They're in a protected community, and they will be protected from these monstrous addiction scientists at the corporations.
It
Yeah.
sounds quite like demonic the way you talk about them, but you got to think these companies are all for profit, and they, like you said, they design these foods to be addictive, and they're not designed to be health conscious. Even like the fruit snack bars and dried
No,
mix, trail mix things, they're not healthy.
no. It's just when you get the whole addiction paradigm, it just and people are being driven crazy by this, because then you get the diet industry that actually, this is very interesting. The US National Institutes of Health came out with a study last year or the year before showing that the people with the greatest longevity, the people who live longest, are in the overweight category. So you have this whole diet industry proposing and selling a concept of thinness that will shorten people's lives. I mean, if you just look at it that way, there's all kinds of insanity out there. So the thin ideal is a sick concept. And it's very interesting, but people who have the thin ideal, there's been really good research on this. They go and, they talk to like adolescents about, just what they're thinking about or their diet habits. The girls with the thin ideals, and they go back and talk to them 5 years later, those are the girls who have eating disorders. It's not, it's something that is fabricated. It's not healthy to be thin. It's actually healthiest to be overweight. Now, when you get into obese, everything changes because the accumulation of fat on the body, you have fat that accumulates under the skin. You can see that, and your doctor is going to talk to you about it, maybe not. But the fat accumulation then will start to take other avenues inside the body. Will start to invade the liver, and you get fatty liver. It'll start to invade the pancreas, and you get insulin failure. It can invade the bones, actually. It can interfere with the bone's ability to remineralize itself, strengthen itself, repair itself. And it can invade muscles and make it difficult to move. So there's a big divide between being overweight and then being obese. Things are happening, and of course, invade the heart and interfere with brain function and interfere with the brain's ability to clean itself. Obese, you need to address, but overweight, but the key is here that what are you eating? If you're eating processed foods interfere with cell function. They destroy cell function. So we started out talking about why do so many different diseases get better when you get off the processed foods and off the stress. Every time, regardless of weight status, processed foods will interrupt cell function and create disease every time. It's just like cigarettes. Every time that cigarette is going to be depositing tar inside your lungs. Every time you take a bite of processed foods, you're you're disrupting cell function and making yourself sick. And I know you don't want to do it, and I know you know better. And people say to me all the time, I know better, but I still do it. Think about a war between your addicted brain cells and your frontal lobe. And the addicted brain cells are winning because they have the help of that urge to be normal. Everybody's eating processed foods, everybody's sick. 93% of the people in the US have high triglycerides, blood pressure, cholesterol, or blood glucose, or waist to hip ratio. So they're overweight, 93% of Americans. So if you want to feel normal and secure in the US, you have to get yourself a bad test, right? I mean, I know that sounds funny. So it's really important to be inside a community, surrounded by people who are healthy, so that you can feel normal and relaxed and secure.
Yeah, I like.
Jonathan, does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense to me. I'd be surprised if the viewers didn't understand that. Be quite shocked because that's very transparent to me. I think that these groups, whether it be a food addiction group or any group, or a weight loss group, or even a weight gain group, they're very beneficial. I mean, there are studies done on cohorts of people where they're using a community setting versus doing it on their own, and they get better results in a group.
Always, it's very clear. It's a very particular network of very special neurons, very special brain cells all throughout the brain, and they're called mirror neurons. because it's literally, if they see somebody doing something, they reflect that down on your own brain, and like a mirror, they activate the same brain cells as they're seeing. So they're imprinting on your own brain as if you were doing whatever it is. And then those brain cells are trained to do that thing. So who you're watching is crucial to your health. And really, really, really stop blaming yourself, because you know that saying, we're the sum total of the 5 people we see the most. That's literally physically true in the way your brain is structured. So
Mm.
it's not your fault. It's not your fault.
Yeah, I can't agree more with that. Really, it makes sense to me. What is your diet? What does your diet look like now then? So obviously you've got the different carnivore,
So I'm
omnivore.
71 years old. Yeah, I'm 71 years old, and I started this when I was 44, 27 years ago. And my food plan has changed quite a bit. I cannot eat the same quantities of food I ate 27 years ago. So I eat a protein, and I eat a protein with 3 meals and usually a snack late afternoon with either raw fruit or raw vegetables. Some vegetables I don't like raw. I cannot eat them raw. I don't want to eat them raw. And so they're cooked just to the point where they're going to be pleasant to eat. And then about every 3 or 4 days, I need to add a serving of a low carb starch to my day. So I'll add buckwheat or green peas. And I eat beans and non-gluten grains, so brown rice, quinoa. Quinoa is not a grain. Amaranth is not a grain. Sweet potatoes and all just great foods. Anything that still looks like it did at the moment of harvest. So green peas still look like they did, but green peas, powder, like protein powder, no, that does not. There's nobody's harvesting that.
Mm.
So yeah, it's very easy to. I mean, we have lists. We'll give you lists of clean foods to eat, but you've got to get the addicted hyperactive reward center, dopamine, serotonin, and endocannabinoid and opioid pathways to stop just pumping out the cravings. And that you do by, as I said, putting on this helmet, this protection of cue stimulation triggers. So the ARC provides the messaging: you are wonderful, you are strong, you are powerful, you have these skills, you are doing this, you're normal here in this setting. You have thought control, you have emotion control, you know how to do all these things. We have all these exercises to build those capacities in you easily. Your community is available to you constantly. That's your helmet. That's yours. 15 to 17 hours a day of programming. We have trainings for people who want to go into this more deeply. You can train to become a manager with the ARC, and the people who go into that program and immerse themselves deeper, they're ever stronger and ever more powerful and ever calmer in all situations. But we also have short-term trainings for people who just want to learn more about it. We have also for professionals. If you are a coach, we have an accelerated professional training. So you're not the person probably who wants to end up with an ARC job. Maybe you do. It's a great supplemental income for a coach, because we do all the marketing. We're very good at reaching the people who are suffering. So you can have an income without spending 60% of your time on marketing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably quite helpful. I mean, you're doing a great service there. It's you're tackling it from the root cause, and that's people aren't eating the right food. They're addicted to the food, and it's not their fault.
Not
I
their
love that.
fault.
Mm.
Yeah. Do you know in the United States, the medical services industry and the food industry combined make up 1/3 of the gross domestic product. 1/3 of the US domestic economy is medical services and food. And they grow, in tandem. 30, 40 years ago, they were 15% combined, 7 and 7. And now since the tobacco companies came in and brought their addiction business model with them, they've grown. If you think of this as a pie chart, it's now 1/3.
That's amazing. Yeah, just think like how many years gets 15%. What's it going to be 50 years from now when I'm an old man? you know?
The real hope I see, and I hope that all your coaches and your audience will contact me about this, info@processedfoodaddiction.com, is workplaces. You can create an arc, or I'm really starting to talk more about the ROC, the Remission Optimistic Community. You can create a ROC inside a workplace. Common education, common knowledge, common understanding, then brings on protective behaviors from everybody. And that whole thing about your brain will not let you be abnormal. If it's normal in your workplace that people don't bring in processed foods, that they bring in healthy foods, that they don't have diseases, that they're not talking about medications and surgery all the time. If you're instead in an environment where it's normal for people to have perfect blood work, and it's abnormal to have surgery, and it's normal to be energetic and clear-headed and emotionally stable, and then you can create that inside a workplace. So if you're in a workplace and you need a wellness program, or you have contact with a wellness person, please email us info@processed food addiction, because we want to work with Jonathan, and we want Jonathan to be hooked up with a workplace.
Thank you. Yeah, that'll be very useful. What I will do is I'll link any show notes, information, how I can contact you, or even your admin, for example. Been in touch with, I think it was Anna. But yeah, it's a great job you're doing, and I hope that people take this into consideration. A lot of people will slip on their diet sometimes. They'll go back to the yo-yo dieting and fall into the trap of the foods that they're eating before. It's best to get this nailed out of the way, sorted properly.
Yeah. Thank you.
Are there any closing thoughts you had before I wrap this up?
Yeah. These are drugs. I was talking to somebody who said, well, I have to give my small children enough calories to last them to the next meal. So I just give them a big plate of pasta, which is boiled white flour laced with gluteomorphines, gluten. And I just like, I wanted to say, well, why don't you just line up some shots of vodka for them? It's like, I restrained myself. I didn't do it. Or people ask me, how often should I give my children sugar? And I said, well, sugar is more destructive than cocaine. So anytime you would give them cocaine, you can give them some sugar. So it's just like, try to inject some humor in this, but just no, deep down in your heart, that this is not your fault, but it does require a comprehensive, immersive online program. You can continue to run your life entirely, just play it in the background like you'd play the radio, and get protective thoughts into your heads.
Brilliant. That's perfect. Like I said, I'll link all your details, information below in the show notes. Anyone that wants to access those, just click below and you'll be able to get hold of her very easily, I'm sure.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thanks for what you do. You're
Thanks
getting the
very much
word
for your
out
time
there
as well.
Yeah, take care.
Cheers. Bye.